So Brandon Marshall coming on there saying, hey, I'm reporting this. We can assume that, okay,
Oh, yeah.
he's dialed. I'm going to trust Brandon Marshall if he says I'm reporting something more than pretty much anybody else out there right now. Just with how he's playing. He says the Russell Wilson saga is over. He said Pete and Russ are past it. Don't even worry about it. I'm about to report this. This conversation is over. Russell Wilson is about to be a Seahawk for a long time. Russ and Pete Carroll on the same page. I think their relationship is probably better than it's ever been.
Whoa.
Now listen, let me tell you why. You know, if you ever go through something with somebody and it gets bad, like back in the day, for instance, you potentially would have a scrap right there, maybe a wrestle, maybe something like that. You get your emotions out, you would do your whole thing. Afterwards, what you learn from is that your relationship has now matured a little bit. It has gone through some things. Instead of maybe being built on sand, now there is a little bit of a foundation. There are some things you've gone through. There are some things you've had to work through together. There's conversations that you were forced to have because you potentially got to the point where you had to have them. That happens, I think, personally, professionally. That happens in a lot of people's lives, maybe with themselves even. And I think if Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson had to sit down and talk after Russell's team was saying things, then Pete Carroll's team was saying things, and by Pete Carroll's team, I mean anonymous sources that came out to say, like, Russell Wilson would be jack shit if it wasn't for Pete Carroll. That was basically what an anonymous source said. After Team 3 came out and said, we don't like what the Seahawks have been doing with Russell Wilson, the offensive line, the play calling, the blah, blah, blah. So, like, I think there was some nasty shit that was being said publicly, which obviously, if Brandon Marshall's reporting this is over, their relationship is better than ever, they had to sit down. They had to say, hey, Rush, that's probably what Pete did.
Let's talk.
Okay, let's talk. They sat down. I would assume square table, one on either side of one on opposite sides of each other. Meal, I think, is probably served while this is happening. And I think they had an entire conversation. I think there was potential notes that were taken. I think there was a lot of hard conversations that potentially happened. But if it's being reported that they're better than ever, that means they came to an understanding. They may have been forced to have this conversation, by the way. May have been forced to have this conversation because a way that this could have not happened, by the way, Russell Wilson just saying, trade me, I'm not talking. So they were forced to have this conversation for whatever reason, and it feels like they're back and better than ever. Congrats to the Seahawks fans. And by the way, I would like to say this show right here has never once said that we feel as if Russell Wilson's out of there.
No.
We said it feels like
That's right.
The reporting is because this was something that was being talked about. Then you hear about the Chicago Bears Seattle Seahawks trade thing that happened in Fargo, North Dakota, and it's like, oh, there was some real shit happened. Then more people have insiders are saying, hey, this is still going. This is not over. And then when Brandon Marshall says, I would like to report this, I'm like, okay, I believe that. Here we go. They moved past it. So there was some smoke. There was probably some moments where Russell stormed out of meetings allegedly, and other things were happening. And philosophical differences is what Pete Carroll described as Schottenheimer's offense that he was running with Russell Wilson, which was basically just Russell Wilson. So I think they were forced to have a convo. Good for them. I don't know how the offensive line's going to react to this whole thing, but if they can move forward, I assume everybody else will be like, we can too.
Well, and initially, Schefter basically said, hey, don't write this off until after the draft, right? He said it's still possible that teams will make plays during the draft. So, I mean, don't you think that someone other than like the team itself or something would say, like, hey, these guys got together, Russ is going to be here for a long time, if they're not at least still maybe entertaining someone calling up with a new deal for him?
Yeah, because imagine if they go through that whole conversation. Imagine Russ and Pete have a full conversation. They're better than they've ever been. And then somebody's like, all right, you want 5 first-round picks?
Yeah.
We'll give you the number 4 this year and then 4 first-round picks.
Okay. Then also maybe a third and 2 starters. And Pete has to go, all right, let's go back to the table here. I don't know what you do. Because if something is appetizing enough, do they go for it?
Right.
And I think the answer is going to be no. I think the answer is going to be no now that now that he's reporting that they're better than they've ever been, because you're not going to move on from a top 5 quarterback if you have a top 5 quarterback, if you don't have to move on from a top 5 quarterback. It felt like in Houston was going to be forced to move on from Deshaun because Deshaun and his team were taking a stand saying, hey, we're not coming there. I thought that was that felt like that was very publicly over, right? This one never felt like that, right? It felt as if I don't know, dude. When that team started burying the Seahawks, dude, when his team 3, when his chef and his cardio coach and his strength and conditioning coach and his agility coach and his
spiritual advisor,
whenever that the team 3 was releasing statements, and then those statements, by the way, were not being shot down by Russell Wilson. And then when quotes were coming out from about how good Russ would be, and Pete wasn't saying anything. Man, there was some times where it felt as if this shit is bad over there.
Oh, yeah.
If they're better than ever, good for them. Then.
Yeah, but he still never came out and said, like you mentioned, hey, I want to be traded. And after listening to Brandon Marshall saying, Russell loves the Derek Jeter story. He loves the Kobe Bryant story, how those guys stayed with, one team throughout their entire career. You'd think there would be like kind of a 2-year window here where if they do take a step back, probably Pete Carroll's on the hook before Russell Wilson is.
Okay, so we can do like classic sports take show. Mm-hmm. He likes Derek Jeter.
Yep.
Okay, he likes Kobe Bryant, Robert Mathis. Russell Wilson publicly hates what Tom Brady and Peyton Manning did.
Oh,
right. He does.
That's true though.
Because he put up other people.
Yeah.
He's putting down everybody
Loves
else.
Drew Brees.
But there is a sentiment among a lot of players, including Aaron Rodgers, who has said this recently, actually, as last year, I guess. There's something to being with one team for the entire time. Yeah. There's something to just being that whole thing. I mean, granted, 8 years.
How about that?
No big deal.
Russell
Could I
Wilson.
have gone elsewhere? Maybe. Would I have thought about it? Probably.
It's almost like.
But I did stay here. You know what I mean? So here we go. How you doing? But there is a sentiment to like being with one team. There's a thing. There is something about that. So I can see how Russell Wilson would be very, obsessed with that. But then there's also the conversation they want to get to Chicago because it's a bigger market in LA, and that must have all just been bullshit, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not 100% sure.
So if there was a reconciliation between him and Pete, are we led to believe that he basically just threw all of Team 3 under the bus and was just like, yeah, they don't know shit?
Well, then, yeah, because can he come out publicly and bury Team 3, or does that kind of kill 3 and Team 3 together? You know what I mean? Like, or is he have to do it behind closed door? Like,
hey, this can't get out. But
the spiritual coach met up with the cardio coach, and they were talking, and then Go Hawks kind of fell through the window.
Yeah, but or they did what they were told, or Russ was like, hey, thanks for doing this again, guys. Me and Pete just had our conversation. We are going to change the things that you guys pointed out to Pete. And now this Seattle Seahawks team is completely different.
Yeah, Team 3 maybe positioned Russell Wilson to be exactly where he wants to be publicly without Russell Wilson saying any of it.
Yes.
Now Russell Wilson gets to call plays. Now Russell Wilson's a part of the roster.
Yeah.
Now Russell Wilson, is maybe running a team meeting or two.
Yes.
Whatever Russell Wilson wanted to do, which, by the way, whatever the quarterback wants to do, and this is going to sound so bad, but if you're on a team, whatever that fucking guy wants to do that is going to make him play his best football, who cares?
Yeah.
If he's playing football on Sunday really well, let's just get him to Sunday.
Yes.
Like that is a very real. Let's just get the guy to Sunday. That is a mindset that a lot of people have. Whenever you're talking about vets like Bruce Arians, for instance. Now, Bill Belichick, greatest coach of all time. Bruce Arians said though, there's a Wednesday Tom doesn't want to throw. It's like, hey, Tom, hey,
take it off.
do whatever you want.
Whatever.
Hey, Tom, you don't want to throw away. Get to Sunday.
Yeah.
The mindset is let's just get to Sunday. So if Russell Wilson wants to do all these other things, now Pete Carroll and the Seahawks and everything, they have a much different view than I do. But as somebody that was in the locker room, it's just like, hey, none of this matters. Like, let's just get to Sunday. If he balls, we're all happy, right? Let's just get. Now, if he stinks,
Get him out of town.
okay, tell Team 3 to shut their trap.
Yeah, see you later.